So today I will focus more on basically regional actors, which are the most important for the Myanmar, and then some international factors which are really actors playing in a Myanmar. So who is important? We pretty much know who is important. It's China, India, Thailand, ASEAN, and in a lesser extent, Bangladesh. But China, India, Thailand, and then indirectly ASEAN are our key geopolitical context. Everything else is less important in a current world for the reasons which I explained last time. So if we look a little bit, what kind of the systems and what kind of the underlying deeper structures and interests these key countries have, then we can say that China currently is an economic global superpower. There are really only other global superpower in addition to the United States. China is still not the global military superpower, but China is in this moment already the regional military superpower. And as I described last time, the China is a very authoritarian or dictatorship system, which is highly dependent on the good economic performance. So being dictatorship only, meaning repressive political system, is not the only characteristic of China, but it's as important that the China repressive Communist Party has this social contract with the population that they are delivering the significant economic growth, better life for many people, and the national proudness that they are the new superpower. And as I explained last time, this high performance of the China economy and the social contract between the ruling party and the people of China depends very much on China being expansionist. And in a many, many ways being also predatory, because let's say the China do need raw materials from around the world. And so far, China is doing it pretty ruthlessly, kind of trying to capture the raw materials which they need. We also have one additional factor in China, which we don't know how it will play, and that is the Xi factor. That China is not only dictatorship, but it's a personalist dictatorship. The Xi has concentrated absolute power in his hands. That hasn't been the case before, or it has been the case during the Mao, but not after that. But now he is unrestrained, individual, super macho leader in China. That means he is the unrestrained authoritarian decision maker. And there is always a danger in that. Let's say Putin is like that. So that means these kind of the dictators can make extremely dangerously wrong decisions, and nobody will be able to, advise them differently. Maybe it will not kind of create the very negative consequences, but it can. Because, Xi, like any old dictator, wants to leave a legacy. He wants to do something extraordinary before he dies. India is, India is advocating itself that it is a democracy, and in a large extent, India is democracy. India definitely have a very democratic, very good constitution. It has a federal system which is also helping constrain the central power. But at the same time, under the Modi, India became more a liberal majoritarian country, not, fully democratic country, but this kind of the majoritarian country means that the guy who is in a power is activating polarization, divisions in a society, intentionally creating them, because he knows that the majority of the people will be against the other part of the people in that country. And this is what the Modi is, since beginning of his political career, what he is doing. He's playing on this Hindu ideology, Hindu dominance. He's intentionally alienating the other kind of the groups in India, because he knows that Hindu are majority. The second thing, what is important for India, the combination of the kind of the liberal economic policies, the liberal opening of the Indian economy, which started before the Modi, but he accelerated that. And the current geopolitical changes are making India one of the main winners of the current geopolitical shifts, because they are, in a certain way, are now placed themselves between the West, Russia, and China, and in a certain way benefiting from all sides. So they are on the kind of very, very strong, positive economic trajectory. In international relations, they don't promote democracy. India was never doing that. India was, let's say, democratic internally, but externally has never been democracy promoting country. And India was internationally always, let's say, trying to basically follow its own interest. India was before non-aligned country between the Soviet bloc and a NATO bloc. Now they package it as a multi-vector policy. So from India, you can never expect that they will support you as a democracy. India follows, their own national interests, and India is trying to place itself as a new important country in a multipolar or multi-vector war. In Thailand, as we know very well, we basically have a very deeply entrenched military and royalist elites rule. Thailand is basically constitutional authoritarian system with the facade of the democracy. So it has a facade of the democracy, but on the other side, it has this constitutional authoritarianism, and behind that has a military and the royal power as a guardian, which can always do the coup in order not to let democracy take over in a Thailand. Traditionally, Thailand is a full U.S. Alliance ally. Currently, Thailand, and they are not the only one, Indonesia is doing the similar, and some other countries in a region, they are trying to place themselves between the China and United States. So they are trying economically to benefit from the China, one thing, militarily stay in alliance with the United States, still have the United States and Europe as an important market for their export economy, still have the US and Europe as an important investor for them, but let's say, have that as a balancing factor with the China, and try to play in between. And for the Thailand elites, I think these kind of the increase opening toward the China is not just motivated economically, but it's also partly motivated politically. Because if they come under the too big pressure of the democracy in Thailand, they can always then avoid criticism coming from the European Union or from the Western democracies. If they, for example, stage against coup, they can always kind of block the criticism by having the China as their backup big brother. So I do think that now this kind of a gradual shift to China has also underlying political calculation, not just economic. To have a China as a, insurance policy in a case that they will again need to do the coup in order to block the pressure and criticism coming from United States or from the Europe. From today's United States, there will anyhow be no criticism. And then the Bangladesh, has been electoral authoritarianism before the last uprising. Now we don't know exactly where Bangladesh is going. Is it going in direction of democracy, or is going in direction of the nationalism, very strong nationalism? It's not still clear. And when it comes to the Myanmar, Bangladesh basically has just one, profound interest, and that is to basically solve the Rohingya issue for them. Let's say to return Rohingya, let's say, back to Myanmar. This is kind of their sole interest. Now, if we look, what are the neighbors' core interests in Myanmar? So, China's core interest is the most important interest is to keep United States out of the Myanmar. They want Myanmar to be the fully under the geopolitical influence of China, and that there is no US kind of the balancing it. The second thing what China wants is a stability. And then kind of the China wants all these strategically important connectivity projects which they have, these corridors, pipelines, and everything. They want to use Myanmar as a place from where they extract all natural resources to feed their own manufacturing. And for these things, let's say for China, ideal situation in Myanmar is to have a weak, dependent, central military backed central government. So, and let's say to have the parts of the territory controlled by the ethnic organizations, which are also dependent on China. So that they have a situation that they don't have a strong government in Naypyidaw with a strong popular mandate from the people. Because that kind of the government is capable to enter into the multi-dimensional relations with all other countries. And when they do that, they are capable, then that kind of the government can basically, in a soft way, in a economic and political way, balance China overwhelming influence. But if you don't have a strong popular, elected, accepted government in a Naypyidaw, then let's say that government is not strong enough to enter into the multiple relations with everybody else to balance the China. So that government is dependent on the China. And then these kind of the smaller territories controlled by others are also, because they are landlocked, because of all other reasons, they are also dependent on the China. So this is what China wants. China wants to bring the current stakeholders so that military remain the central government in a Burma proper, and to have some of the most powerful ethnic revolutionary organizations, let's say, basically entering into the ceasefire with the junta, and kind of having the same dependency or even bigger dependency on the China. In that situation, Myanmar is an easy prey for the China. Then China has everything, has a stability, can build all things what they want to build, and then can extract all the Myanmar natural resources, and basically other countries will not be able then to compete with the China overwhelming influence. So this is what China wants. What India wants is to balance China. So India is terrified of having China coming to the Myanmar-India border, of China completely taking control over Myanmar coastland. So India is trying to, in a certain way, replicate everything what China is doing by developing relations with the Myanmar military, by trying to develop their own connectivity projects, but they are not just as powerful and as good in doing that like the China. So this is, and then India has these border security questions, which are also kind of they are concerned, and the connectivity projects, which are in a certain way, China's connectivity projects are real and serious. The Indian connectivity projects it's a question whether India, particularly in this moment, has a capacity for that. Maybe they will have, 5 years from now on, if there is a stability in Myanmar. Thailand has, as we know, long borders, and then let's say many kind of security and other kind of the concerns connected with them. Thailand has a big kind of economic interest, that is the gas, but then even as importantly, or even more importantly, Thailand, as we know, has thousands of these kind of, I call it, corrupt interests, because there is so many, you know, business entities and police entities and other entities which are already for decades kind of making a very good money from either legal and illegal businesses in a Myanmar, from Myanmar migrants in a Burma. So in a certain way, the Myanmar and Myanmar people are the cow which different entities in a Thailand are kind of the sucking already very long time. But the characteristic of the Thailand is that Thailand doesn't have a unified and systematic policy toward Myanmar. The China has systematic policy. Even India has the systematic policy, but Thailand doesn't have. In Thailand, we have a multiple players playing their own interests in a Thailand. So in a certain way, in a Thailand, we always need to engage and relate with the many multiple players, because there will be never fully unified Thai policy toward Myanmar. ASEAN, unfortunately, ASEAN has been, since the beginning of the coup, sitting and waiting for Myanmar forest fire to extinguish by itself. ASEAN is not capable to interfere to solve the problem of the Myanmar. So what ASEAN is doing is basically protecting ASEAN image from the negativity of the Myanmar crisis, but not really being capable to solve it. And unfortunately, ASEAN does not really feel the urgency to solve the Myanmar problem. To solving Myanmar problem is urgent for Thailand, because many things are affected in Thailand if the crisis is deepening in Myanmar. Many things are affected for the China with the trouble in Myanmar. India also doesn't have a big trouble, but have some trouble if the things are trouble in Myanmar. But other ASEAN countries, they don't really have a trouble if there is a trouble in Myanmar. So in a certain way, they don't feel a pressure to solve it. Diplomatically, they would like to show that they are capable to do it. But if they don't do it, nothing is burning their hands. As one, Malaysian MP, when the Malaysia took over the ASEAN chairmanship, then one Malaysian MP, a smart guy and in a certain way friendly guy, he was not against the democratic forces in Myanmar. He's friendly to us, but he said, "Look, guys, we have a very small economic interest in Myanmar. Our public in Malaysia, our media, they care about Gaza. They don't care about Myanmar. They don't follow what's going on in Myanmar. So there is nothing domestically in Malaysia what is really pressuring us to solve Myanmar. And we will try to do it, or Anwar will try to do it just for the sake of the prestige. But if he doesn't succeed, we as a country, we haven't lost a lot. And basically, unfortunately, all other ASEAN countries except the Thailand are in a similar situation. They don't care too much. And as I said, when it comes to the Bangladesh, Bangladesh has this interest of the repatriation of the Rohingya, and there is additional element there, and that is these murky schemes of the Bangladesh military intelligence, which are playing the very dangerous, very harmful game with the idea of the creating some buffer zone, and they are really playing a very kind of the dangerous and problematic game. And again, weak central government in Bangladesh is not really capable to control what the Bangladesh military and military intelligence are doing, in a similar way how the government in Thailand is not able to control what the Thai military is doing, and so on. Now, these are kind of the understanding these key countries and understanding their key interest. I have now a number of the slides where I'm going in details, mentioning all these specific interests of these countries. I will jump over them. I will send you the PowerPoint so you can, or maybe I have already shared it, so you can have a look. These are the things what we all know. And let me just stay on these kind of the general things. Once more, coming back to the China, because that triggered also other countries. Till the Operation 1027, China basically did not really seriously interfere in what's going on in Myanmar. They have been waiting for the SAC to finish the dirty job. But when the China realized that it's a probable that the military regime will be toppled down by the revolutionary forces, they started to interfere. But the way how China is interfering is not to help Min Aung Hlaing and the junta win. They are interfering to basically get that situation, what I mentioned, that the military remains as a weak, fake civilian government in a Nepido controlling the Burma majority areas, and then having the ethnic territories being controlled by the ethnic organizations very or fully dependent on China. And China is now using these elections, trying to basically achieve that situation, to create a more acceptable junta. They would like to use elections also to, as far as I'm hearing, to persuade Min Aung Hlaing to be retired, which he will surely not accept and not do. But that will be very good for China, and that will be very good for the military. If the military will persuade Min Aung Hlaing to kind of retire and go with his wealth wherever stolen wealth, wherever he wants, and then basically create the new guys who looks more credible and who can pretend that there is a new start. And then let's say if parallel to that, the China and then others can persuade the one after another revolutionary forces to enter into the ceasefire, they hope they can create a domino effect. One will enter in the ceasefire, then they will move the pressure on another one, then another one will do it, then they will move the pressure and incentives. It's never only pressure and incentives. The next one, and then they get the domino. And if they create this domino, at the parallel to that, they are trying to create the ideally they would like to get the kind of the new NLD, which accept also to be the junior partner of the junta, which they will almost certainly not get. But then they will produce Coco G and others, and then present them as a this kind of the Bama voice. I do think that this game playing of the China, and in a certain way India is partly helping it, Thailand is partly helping it, then different peace donors are also helping that. This is a serious threat. This is a real big challenge for us because all these factors can break our alliance. And if they break alliance, then we will fall as a domino. But if we keep alliance, and even if we are strengthened, that even China cannot achieve what they want. China is not so powerful as, let's say, sometimes it is presented. Outside powers, if you have a strong domestic liberation front, let's say, then outside powers are not able to defeat that. They make struggle longer. But powerful America has couple of times been defeated in Vietnam, in Afghanistan. The powerful China has been defeated in Vietnam, and I can go on. Powerful Indonesia has been defeated in Indonesia, and so on. Let's say when you have this strong domestic liberation front, let's say, then even very powerful outside players cannot really break it. But they do make struggles longer and harder. Last, thing to conclude, and I will then stop and open the space for the question and answers and for the discussions and reflections. And then after that, I can also then come to one more point what I wanted to share with you. But for now, conclusion is that how Myanmar neighbors see the situation in Myanmar. Look, they do see how Myanmar military is seriously weakened. And they do understand that Myanmar military is not capable to regain the control over Myanmar as a whole. But they do believe that the Myanmar military is undefeatable. That at the beginning of the coup, many internationals with whom I talked, they said, yeah, it's a sad, the military is a bad, it is impressive what the Spring Revolution is doing, but at the end of the day, after the 6 months, the military will crush the Spring Revolution in a similar way how the China crushed the uprising in Hong Kong, how Lukashenko and Putin crushed the big uprising in Belarus, how Maduro, with the help of couple of countries, crushed the big resistance in Venezuela. Same will happen in Myanmar. I was from the beginning saying no, that is not what will happen in Myanmar, and it didn't happen. But now the similar thinking is no, military cannot take control as a whole, but they cannot be defeated in a Myanmar lowlands. They cannot be defeated and for that reason, basically, let's say we need the how they call it, negotiated solution. They must remain as a power factor, and we need to make a deal with them. So and unfortunately, there is a lot of international think tanks, and some of the Myanmar think tanks who are spreading this narrative that at the end of the day, military cannot be defeated. But there is also another thing how the outside factors see it. They think that it's not desirable to defeat the Myanmar military because they still see Myanmar military as a guarantee of keeping the Myanmar as a state. Because they do believe that if the military will be removed, that Myanmar will not become federal democratic country, but then Myanmar will become South Sudan, it will become Libya, it will become Syria, and so on. Basically, the country which will then basically fall into the conflict of many, many players, one against the others. And this perspective is really deeply, rooted in a mindset of the people who don't know a lot about Myanmar in a different, you know, foreign ministries. They don't know. They know almost nothing about Myanmar. They don't follow what's happening now, but they have this mindset. And as I said, unfortunately, certain number of the influential think tanks, international and Myanmar ones, are constantly feeding them with this interpretation that military is undefeatable and that only way for the stability in Myanmar is a negotiated solution. And that is the additional reason why we need to strengthen our own, visible alliance. I say, because our alliance now is, we know that it exists, but it's not visible. Anybody from outside, nobody sees that. We are not able to show it. We are everything what we have as alliance is happening behind the closed doors. It's happening somewhere in this kind of the fluid cooperation, but it's not visible. So we cannot persuade anybody. Uh, Let me stop now. Let me just quickly see, let's say, yeah, these other slides about Indian specific, more detailed interest in Myanmar, Thailand's more specific interest, and so on. But you can have a look on that by yourself. So look, let's say here I have also dedicated, I think, two slides explaining why Malaysia and Thailand are now considering joining the BRICS, which is basically China-Russian alliance. And I will not now go into explaining that. You can have a look on these slides. It's interesting to follow that because this is this geopolitical repositioning of the countries, and it's not just Malaysia and Thailand what are doing that. It's it can happen that Vietnam will do that. It can happen that the Indonesia will do that, and other countries. The way how the countries around the world are now trying to place themselves in a way that they have one foot in the China-Russian alliances and one foot in a collaborative relations with the Europe and with the United States, and somehow try to be on both sides. And this is important to understand. Let's say this kind of the big reorganizing of the geopolitical relations. Here is something what is good for you to just remind yourself, or in which countries in a Indo-Pacific region the people power has played important role. That means that there has been in one moment people uprising against the authoritarian regimes, and then they have been either successful or failed. And then you will see the Philippines had a successful people's uprising in 1986. South Korea has, Indonesia has it, Taiwan has it. In Thailand, there has been a few attempts, and they have been kind of the mixed success. Let's say they sometimes succeeded to bring a little bit more democracy, but then the military and royalists again kind of reconfirmed their dominant power. Uh, in Hong Kong, it failed. In Malaysia, the bearish movement has been successful. In a Bangladesh, more recently, it has been successful, but it's with a very uncertain future. In a Sri Lanka, it has been successful, but still country haven't really managed to, recover from the economic mess. So it's a good for you to have in a mind that this kind of the people power in Asia is kind of factor in the politics. This is coming to the politics. Currently, we have these Gen Z's uprisings in Nepal, Indonesia, and Philippines. This is the picture around the world where recently the Gen Z protests happens. In some places they removed government, in some places they still not succeeded to do it. All of these Gen Z current movements are very, very messy. They are successful to organize the big protests, but then they don't have any political agenda. They don't really know how to deal with the politics. So they are, even if they remove the government, they are not really successful to bring a profound change. But we will see something important is happening. But what I wanted to make you start to understand is that in Asia, the concept of the development and responsibility of the state to provide the social economic development of the country is the primary principle of the Asian state policy. And it's a different in Europe, it's different in the Western world. In the Western world, there is a very strong tradition in which the primary obligation of the state is not to provide the economic development of the country, because the private businesses are doing that. The society as a whole is doing that. The primary responsibility of the Western state is to create and protect the freedom, to protect the rights, to protect the rule of law, and to provide the framework for the social and economic development. And that is a big, big difference in a political mindset in a Western part of the world and the Asian part of the world. Because in Asia, the key principle in all the countries, when you look around, is whether the state and somebody who is controlling the state is able to provide the uh, the stability. Is it able to provide the social economic development? And then in one moment, because the big part of the Asia has been under the colonial rule, is it able to provide the protection of the country from the outside occupying forces? So in Asia, we have two types of the situations. We have a situation in which this authoritarian state provided the development, because development is seen as a key thing, and then from the development, countries moved to the democracy. And examples are, very good examples are South Korea, the Taiwan, in a certain way, kind of the Indonesia, and so on. But then we also have in Asia the number of the countries which are providing the development without democracy. And they are also themselves seen as a legitimate government by their own population. And the good examples are Singapore as almost Bacon example of that. The Vietnam currently is that kind of the system. The China is that kind of the system which is buying its own legitimacy by providing the development without democracy. And So even in a countries in which we had this shift from the authoritarian system because of the people power, like South Korea, Taiwan, Indonesia, Malaysia, and so on. In all these countries, people power in one moment shifted those countries from the authoritarian system to the democratic one. But even in those countries, this kind of the new democracy has been created as a elite pact. These new democracies haven't really removed the elites from the previous regime, but it has been kind of in a certain way, new elite deal between the previous elites and the elites leading the democratic movement. And then all of them made agreement in a certain way, a new agreement, how to secure the, the further social economic development in those countries. And I do think, let's say that, that it's a very, very important for you to understand, because this is profoundly the mindset of the Asian policymakers, that they don't see democracy and freedom and rights as a primary obligation of the state. They see social economic development as the key thing. And the second thing, they don't really believe into the kind of people's revolutions. They believe that at the end of the day, the only way how you can move forward is through the elite deal, through elite uh, uh, agreement between those who belonging to the previous regime and those who are, leading the whatever people's power or democratic uprising. And because this is the history of the big part of the Asia, this is also, the glasses which they are bringing when they look on a Myanmar. And that's part of the reason why they believe that only solution in a Myanmar is negotiated solution between the military and the revolutionary forces. So that means this call for the negotiated solution is not primarily coming from their reading of the situation in Myanmar, but is coming from their own political mindset. It's coming from where they are coming from. And again, I wanted you to become aware of that. And if you want to go more deeper into this topic of the development as a primary obligation of the states in Asia, have a look on there are two lectures done by these two gentlemen, Joseph Wong and Dan Slatter. They have written a very interesting book, From Development to Democracy, The Transformation of the Modern Asia. I have myself learned a lot from this book, and they have given a couple of lectures based on this book. So if you watch these lectures, I think it will really broaden a little bit your understanding. So this is one point to what I wanted to make at the end. And the second thing, I will not now go into the details of these two slides. You can do it by yourself, but I have listed here the significant separatist movements which happen in Southeast Asia, and then the significant separatist movements which happened in other Asian countries. And if you look through that, you will see that all important Southeast Asian countries have either historically had the problem with the separatist movement, or some of them still have that problem. All important Asian big countries had or all and also still have the problems with the separatism in their own countries. And this is something what is very, very important for you to understand, because this thing is the main obstacle for the Asian countries to accept any part of the Myanmar becoming independent state. Because if there are any ambitious in a Myanmar, of any part of the Myanmar to become the independent state, you need to be aware that all major Asian countries will be strongly, strongly against that, not because of you, but because of the fear that they can have the impact on their own domestic policies. And that is, I think, the reason why for the other Asian countries and then everybody else, having the federal or even confederal Myanmar, or something which is partly federal, partly confederal Myanmar, is something what will be acceptable. All Asian countries will make a significant resistance of letting any parts of the Myanmar become the independent state. And if you want, example for that, just a little bit analyze who has recognized the Kosovo after the Kosovo became independent after the breakup of Yugoslavia. The countries which don't have a problem with the separatists in their own countries, they have recognized it. It's not a problem. But all countries which have a problem with the separatism in their own countries, including Spain and so on, have not recognized Kosovo because they have been afraid that that will have a consequence for their own domestic politics. And this is something what I want you to, have in mind. If separately from the foreign affairs training course you would like to have more discussion about these, self-determination and independence and federalism and confederalism, I'm happy to do that, but outside of the foreign affairs training because this is not the main topic. But I do want to kind of put that thing in your thinking because this is also important for our foreign affairs relations to understand what these countries around us are very, very afraid. And not because of what's happening in Myanmar, but because what they have back at home. So let me